Shut.
Oh, back at it again, baby. All right, seeing a place to be along with Russ Landy. It's the Infectious Scouting 2021 Kickoff Show. I know you missed us the last couple weeks, but the dust is settled. The 2020 draft is over, and we're moving and grooving. And now we're counting you down to Cleveland, Russ. We didn't make it out to Las Vegas this year, but now it's destination Cleveland, so the countdown continues. We're counting down to Cleveland, and this is the 100-year anniversary, the 20-man Hall of Fame induction that they had planned for that ceremony. What's going to happen with that? What's going to happen with football? Let's start right there because everything is moving parts. We've got, looks like from my educated guess, I'm hearing there will be a college football season. Will it be a condensed season? Will there have fans? The NFL working with the college football powers to be trying to coordinate it so that the season is in sync because, as you know, the draft season has to be in sync. And then, you have the indoor leagues is probably farewell tour, but let's kick it off up north. Give us the finger on the pulse, the CFL. I'm hearing conflicting reports. What is your estimated guess?
I don't have any sort of inside info. The commissioner actually gave a speech this week, sort of a town hall, basically saying, hey, the hope is September 1st. If all goes well, that'll be when we kick things off. And they decided we're no longer this year. They're not going to commit to having the Grey Cup in Saskatchewan definitively. This year, for the first time in as long as I can remember, the Grey Cup will be in the team's home city that has the best record of the two teams in the championship game. So when the championship game is played, or the two conference championship games are played, the two winners, they'll say who had the best record that year. That's where the championship game will be. So it's a little bit different this year. They're not going to do the week-long festival that they usually do for the Grey Cup with events every day because they feel it might be a little bit sort of too risky to do all those activities with so many people together. Whether there's going to be fans or not, the commissioner said that's to be determined. They're going to rely a lot on the government sort of providing direction. So the hope is September. I think he also was pretty honest and said the reality is there's a chance there may not be football in the CFL this year. So it was great to hear the commissioner speak, to hear what he's thinking and what his sort of plans are going forward. But I love the fact that he's listening to what the government's saying. He's going to be cautious because the last thing we want to do is see any players, fans, anything, that anybody gets sick involved in the CFL.
Of course, Russ Landy, U.S. scout for the Calgary Stampeders, has served in the NFL, CFL, the original XFL. And Russ, let's talk.
Which reminds you, nobody would have guessed that the original XFL would actually last longer than the second
yes, it
XFL.
did.
It's sort of crazy how that happened.
And it's funny because, Vince McMahon is off the hook. He doesn't have to pay Oliver Luck $24 million. He files for bankruptcy. Now you're hearing whispers that he is the person trying to buy back the XFL. What a shrewd business move. Hey, imagine if Oliver Luck saw Vince McMahon walking down the street. I wonder what his reaction would be.
I don't think I'd want to be around that. The only thing Vince has going for him is, he's a lot bigger and stronger than Oliver is at this point in life. But yeah, it's a weird situation. But if that turns out to be his plan to bring the league back in a year or two, that's a brilliant business. The problem I think he'll have is he had built a great staff, both in the XFL league office and around the teams. None of those people are going to come back and work because they're going to probably feel they were sort of, I don't know if the word screwed or cut off at the knees, whatever it may be. So he's going to have to go look and find new people to probably come in. But hey, this is a really smart businessman. It wouldn't shock me if he gave it another attempt. Clearly, he believes in this other league. And the fact that he is trying to find a way to get back in and buy what's left of the XFL tells me he still believes there might be an opportunity to make this work. And I agree with him. I think there's 100% chance to make it work. I think if it's done the right way, it can be not only a profitable venture, but a great feeder league for the NFL.
Yeah, and it's funny because now you hear this buzz all the time that the NFL wants to bring this minor league, this developmental league, and that buzz is coming now. And they say that's real conversations that Troy Vincent's having with the NFL. And will it ever come to fruition? I mean, the World League was so monumental in the development of players. I mean,
oh yeah, Kurt Warner, Brad Johnson. I mean, some phenomenal players came into that World League. But the cost at that time, I was told it was $35 million a year they were losing. Imagine
about
now,
$1 million
20
a
years
team
later. Yeah. Now you're talking what, $100 million probably. Are owners going to be willing to lose $3 million per team? I think some would, like Jerry probably would, the Robert Kraft would. But I think some of these teams that don't have those funds would probably say no.
Well, and especially they're losing all that revenue at the gate this year, because even if they do have fans, it's going to be a limited type of basis. They said the college football economic impact of not having fans in the stadium would be close to $5 billion.
Oh, I don't know how college football is basically going to have to use credit cards to get by this season, because there's no way most of these programs, if the football team loses money, the whole athletic department loses money in almost every school. So that means every athletic department is going to be running in the negative this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of not major programs, but mid-majors have to really not just get rid of teams, but scale back their entire athletic program a year from now, maybe having to get out of football if they lose so much money this year. I hope that's not the case, but it wouldn't shock me.
There's going to be some ripple effects from this, I believe, because, you got a school like Rutgers who doesn't look optimistic to play football in September, despite what some people might think. It's not looking too good. But then Ohio State, like, they're ready to go. I mean, you see it out. Who is it? Alabama's already looking to replace USC with your hat, TCU. Yeah, they're already talking crazy, I mean, right? What is that? That's craziness. So, I mean, and then you think about all the FCS teams that aren't getting that buy-in game that, and, there's been these rumblings about a super PAC, a super 64.
Yep.
Could this be the foundation of that?
It could be, especially, but the thing is, they would have to almost do it on their own and leave the NCAA, because the NCAA basically said, if your school doesn't have students going to school on campus, there's no football, no college sports, because these are student athletes. Well, California already said, we're not having school this fall in person. So you telling me the NCAA is going to have a season without college football in California? UCLA, USC, gone?
That's crazy.
I mean,
these guys got to go play in Las Vegas. I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, I can't even imagine.
I don't know how you make it work. I really don't. I mean, I know they're going to try hard, and I understand that. But, I mean, I spoke to a guy in the NFL, not with the league office, but with a team who's been in the league over 20 years, pretty senior guy. And he said that the league isn't really talking to teams. They're being very sort of closed off. They don't want anybody to know what's going on. His guess is it's 50-50 whether they play this year. So
in the NFL,
he said, despite their publicly saying all these things about that they are playing, he said they're doing the right thing. They're just like they did with the draft. You have to plan that you're going to be able to. Right. But he said, if they get into training camp and all of a sudden 7 or 8 teams are overlooked and get just hammered by this, he said they're going to shut this down. He said they're not going to risk the sport's future and players literally dying just to have a season. So, and he personally doesn't think there's going to be football this year in the NFL. Now, he said he thinks the league feels it's 50-50. He personally just doesn't think it's going to happen.
And, you hear things like, I think 2 days ago, Maryland just peaked for coronavirus cases. They just hit their peak. And so now we're expecting that curve to flatten in a couple months and be safe to play. Boy, Russ, I'll tell you, I think,
is it safe to play, or is it safe to live as long as you social distance? I mean,
well,
I know
how could it be safe to play if we're saying you're not allowed on campus?
Exactly.
But it's safe. I mean, that's the craziness, And
I mean, that same buddy of mine who was telling me about the whole thing with the NFL, he said what the people not in the league office, but that him and his buddies around the league have been sort of talking about is, how do you make this work? He said it's enough tests that the teams own that they can test each person before they come in the facility and when they leave the facility every single day of the week. Players, coaches, marketing, sales.
That's expensive. Yeah.
That's expensive. But he said that's the only. Now, that's not the league talking in any way, shape, or form. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying this is what a handful of people in the league, in the scouting area, personnel, that's what their thought is. How else do you make this work? How else can you rightfully put people's lives on the line if you can't adequately test them every single day to be safe?
That's exactly right. And the NHL, NBA, MLB, they'll all be a great test.
Yes, no doubt.
Because they're all going to attempt this right before the NFL. Yep. On the flip side, if somebody dies in one of those sports,
then there's no sports
it's over
until the vaccine. If
it's
one
over.
person dies, there will be no professional sports or collegiate sports until there's a vaccine.
Doesn't it bother you a little bit, Russ, that we know that possibility exists, yet it's almost like we want to ignore that fact because we want football so badly that we're willing to ignore that until it happens. Then it becomes real.
Well, I think I don't know if it's we want football. I think it really comes down to the businesses want to be in business, whether it's football or banks or whatever. I think they view it as, hey, we can't not have a business. Put it this way. If the banking industry had to shut down because of this and was told you can't reopen until we have a vaccine, the banks would say no. They'd be like, no, we can't afford to go out of business. We're trillion-dollar companies.
Right.
So I think when you look at that, I just think now I do think there's a little bit of, like President Obama said, it's driving him crazy not having sports. Hey, I'm watching the Korean baseball league. I mean, come on now.
How's that going?
It's interesting.
I heard they got sex dolls in the stands.
They have sex dolls. They have mannequins in the stands, and it's hysterical. And how about this? I don't know if you heard the German professional, the Bundesliga league reopened. And they're not having fans, but they offered every season ticket holder $20 per game. We will create a mannequin that looks like you and put it in your seat. And they sold out first day for the whole season.
Wow.
Every season ticket holder in the league chipped in $20 a game because they want to have their face there in the stands.
There you go.
That's what the NFL's got to do.
Got to get creative, right? Create new opportunities.
$30 a game instead of the 180
or
2,000. Now the thing that people aren't talking about is the ticket money hurts if they're not open. The suite money is devastating for like the Giants Stadium with 400 suites.
Sure.
These bigger stadiums that have hundreds of suites, that's hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Whereas the seats.
Well, the PSLs too. I would imagine the PSLs are on hold, right? So.
Well, imagine how would the Chargers and Rams selling PSLs? You have two teams that didn't win last year. The stadium's running behind. People are scared about getting sick. The governor's saying you can't do anything. There's not going to be college sports. Who in the hell is going to put down $5 or $10 to get a PSL in a stadium that may not have football this year?
Nobody.
With the unemployment, I don't know how you make it work.
Well, the other thing to this is, talking to some of the scouts around the league, they feel like, hey, yeah, we're going to start training camp and there's going to be rookie tryouts and, all those guys will get an opportunity at some point. But Russ, I'm looking at it like the probably realistic option here is the season will be delayed. We'll have to shave off a week or two or maybe 3 or 4. And then at that point, like, is there really going to be time for rookie tryouts? Like, is that going to be a priority for these teams? Like, come on, they're going to be focused on trying to get ready for the season. And we posted an interesting stat that we grabbed from Neil Stratton over at Inside the League. 521 rookie tryouts last year. Yep. 0 this year. 15
to 20 per team. Yeah, there's no doubt. Well, think about this. We were just talking about the NFL Europe, right? When that got closed, every head coach and every GM that they polled said keep it. The league said, yeah, we really don't care what you think. We don't want to spend the money. So if the GMs and head coaches are saying we want player tryouts, but the league says we don't really care, we're doing a shorter training camp, no tryouts, tough luck. Do you think the league really cares? They just want to run and make business. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. The league has to do what they think is in their best interest as a league, but they're not going to care if teams get to try out guys that they didn't think enough of to sign. The league will say, hey, if you like them enough, cut some of the guys you got and sign them. So that's the hard part is for these young kids that are looking for opportunity is it's really hard. And we're getting hit with it too, is I have players asking me every day, when are the tryouts? When are this? We were both at that BSN showcase in Indianapolis. There were 7 or 8 really interesting guys that I would love to get in front of my coaches for the Stampeders, but we're not even allowed to do tryouts in the U.S. So these kids are really stuck. I think, unfortunately, a lot of these kids, you're going to learn a lot about which kids have the mental toughness. They're basically going to have to keep working out for a year and re-enter this process next year. And truthfully, there's some, now it's not good, but you will learn the kids that show up next February, March, April, ready to go at peak shape, running as fast as they ever had and doing all that. Those are the guys that will be dedicated. The guys that come there and say, hey, I didn't have a facility, I didn't have a gym, and I'm 30 pounds overweight, but once you sign me, I'll get in shape. Maybe not so much. So there's obviously a lot of negatives, but it is an opportunity for these young men to really, if they can tough it out for a year, prove their mental toughness and their willingness to go the extra mile to the teams that are going to be looking for players next year.
Yeah, it's just, and it's a frustrating process for them because they won't get a
Horrible.
chance to lay down any film. They won't get to play indoor. They might not get a chance to play up north, and you're just in limbo land. Luckily, we're creating events such as the ANC Combine, and we've got, probably close to 500 players signed up already. We're having a seminar on Sunday, as a matter of fact, that will be speaking to the players, trying to prep them. As you listen to this show, we're trying to guesstimate the best we can. Nobody truly knows, but we can, based on our years of experience, based on the people we talk to, try to put the pieces of the puzzle together in terms of what we think might happen, but nobody truly knows. And I think, there's just a lot of, it's like being a rooster with his head cut off. These guys are out there just plucking around, finding a local high school or a field or somewhere just to try to stay in shape. And, I really wish there was more we can do, but we're doing the best we can, and it's going to be interesting because now the undrafted free agents next year are going to have to compete with all these
this year, no doubt.
It's unbelievable. So,
and you know what I think is going to be interesting, Rick, because you mentioned this, is it just is the teams that have money, where even if they lose 50 million this year as a franchise, the teams that have money to where they say, it doesn't matter, I'm willing to keep spending, those are the ones that are going to gain a huge advantage. Because once the season starts, if it does start on, even if it's a week or two delayed, you're still going to have those Tuesday workouts that every team brings in guys to work out. Right. Well, some of the teams where money is an issue, they may still only do their 5 or 6 or 8 guys. Some of these teams that say, you know what, the Cowboys, they may say, we don't care. They may bring in 100 guys a week and put them through full workouts. That way, by the end of the season, at least they have numbers on these kids, and they have guys for the practice squad ready to sign futures contracts as soon as the season's over. So the players may not get their opportunity now, but at least certain teams will be able to, because of their financial backing, be able to really get a head start on signing guys for next year that get overlooked.
Well, that's a good point. And, you say, well, why don't players want to play for teams like Cincinnati? Well, because Cincinnati will be the team that takes those tryouts and keeps it regionalized, where a team like Dallas will bring players in all over the country. So great points. Russell Landy, longtime scout, NFL, CFL, XFL, Rick Saratelli here, NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. We'll see what happens with the All-Star game circuit. It's just a uncertain times here in the 2020, what is it? May 22nd. It's Memorial Day weekend here. Russ, we're getting geared up for the beach here on the Jersey Shore.
It's going to be an interesting weekend.
It's already happening. I was out there this morning early, 6, 7 a.m. and the people are already barnstorming down.
Are they really?
So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be the ultimate test because, I know that they said, hey, we opened the beaches in Georgia and we opened the beaches in Florida. And guess what? It worked. Well, the population density is nothing anywhere close down there as it is in New Jersey. So we literally, my cousin, I hope she's not watching, Angela, but I mean, what are you doing? She's on Facebook waiting in line for a beach badge, 2 hours. I mean, what are you doing? And these people are all on top of each other like a bunch of jerks, But hey, sorry, Ange, we love you, baby. But Russ, the Infectious Scouting Podcast, we took a couple weeks off. We're going to be here each and every week, counting you down to Cleveland, as we said, 2021, hopefully in April. But, people do tune in normally for the draft, but we had to address the kind of state,
100%.
The football, but kind of moving forward now, and I think the biggest things, like, I know Blessed, I think National might be meeting this weekend too, but Blesto is giving their presentation to the NFL teams. I've already got word that it's not going to be anywhere close to being in depth as years past. They're missing a lot of those questionnaires. They're obviously missing the measurables. And now you're relying on the strength coach to be honest with you and give you accurate data. I mean, how much of a monkey wrench is that into the equation?
Well, what it's going to do, and this is something I've talked with a handful of scouts about, is in a normal year in, say, an area, you may have 50 guys that are not Division I players on your list, maybe 40. This year, you're going to double or triple that, because the thing that people are going to do this year, and I can tell you as a Blesto scout, when we go on the road, we go to some really low-level schools in terms of low-level football, not that the institution's a bad school, but like Graceland University in Iowa or Evangel University in Missouri.
Ashland.
Yeah, exactly. And you go there and you see a guy who's a dominant player, but you run him and a receiver runs a 5.1 or a 4.9. Like, it's great that he's dominant. I can't put him on the list. Well, this year you're going to see a lot of guys that are great lower level players that probably are rejects by the numbers, but we don't have the numbers. So they're going to get put on the list because teams, you as a bless those guys, you can't afford to not include every single unbelievably ultra productive player. So
Sure.
you're going to see a lot of scouts this fall when they go on the road, if colleges let them in. I've heard a lot of colleges have already told NFL teams we're not allowing scouts this fall. So that's a whole nother direction to go in. But you're going to have to do a lot more film work because you're going to have to watch these guys from the St. John's University where Ben Bartz came out of, or like I said, Minnesota State or Evangel or one of these, where a kid that may have 3 1,600-yard rushing year game seasons, he's going to be on the list, even though he may actually measure 5'7", 180 and run a 4.8. But he's a dominant small school guy. They're going to have to put him on the list because you don't have measurables to eliminate it.
You know, I forget what league it was. It's somewhere in another country overseas, but the media, you know, I think the Pro Football Writers or the Football Writers Association sent me an email in terms of what the media should expect when things open back up. And interviews will become Zoom chat rooms, right? And in other sports leagues, you know, where they might usually credential 60 media members, there's only being 10 allowed. And you know what a ruckus that creates, you know, with the guys that feel they're entitled. They've been covering the beat for all these years. Now, all of a sudden, it's a numbers game. But now applying that to the scouts, I mean, I'm here in the Northeast. What you're saying, I might not be able to go into a Rutgers or a Towson or a James Madison. I mean, so now all these Northeast scouts might be in limbo. Like, they've got to be reassigned and do something, right?
Well, I assume a lot of those guys are basically going to get told, if they're not allowed in, they're going to say, watch the film at home. And basically, I think they may even leave it to, hey, you call the individual schools and see if there's any way you can go in and do it sort of on the QT. But most of these schools, they're not going to do that. It's too risky. I mean, do you think Harvard or Brown or one of these schools is going to make an exception for one scout? No, they're going to set a hard line rule. Now, hey, hopefully, like our commissioner said when he was talking a few days ago at his town hall, September is 100 days away. A lot can change. We can understand a little bit more about this. We can have a better clue as to, you know what, it's really not a big deal if it's outdoors. I wouldn't be surprised if come the fall, they tell scouts you can't come to the school to watch film and be in our facility, but you can show up for practice and our coaches will speak to you there and everybody has to wear a mask. Okay, then that's what you got to do if you're a scout. You don't go watch film there. You do all your film work on your laptop. You go to practice, you take your notepad and you talk to the coaches and watch practice and go on to your next school. The people are going to have to be creative. The teams that are creative and think outside the box will probably be the ones most prepared for the next draft.
Interesting. So stopwatch, check. Clipboard, check. Measuring tape, check. Gotta get my mask. Check it, right? I mean, shit. Imagine going to show and driving all the way to the school. You say, "Oh, I forgot my mask." I mean, that's the new reality. So, you know, Russ Landy, Rick Saratella here discussing what the future of football looks like. But let's talk about the future draft coming up, Russ. 2021. Let's give them a sneak peek tease into what the 2021 first round could look like. You know, obviously Trevor Lawrence is the guy we've been talking about, it seems like, in forever. You know, to me, I thought, you know, since Peyton Manning, I would say the highest rated quarterback I've had was Andrew Luck. I think Carson Wentz was close, but I think Lawrence might actually rival Luck in terms of blue chip talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think you very well could. I mean, I'm very excited. I have a few more weeks of stuff I'm doing right now on the global draft for the CFL, but I'm really excited to, when I get a week or two break, to look at Lawrence, Fields, Beau Nicks, to really jump into some of these guys, just get a feel. Because what I've seen from Lawrence when I've watched games is a really gifted frontline NFL starting quarterback. But you know as well as I, and you've been doing this forever like I have, a lot of times guys that look like superstars when you watch games, when you actually put on the film, sometimes you go, oh, and other times you go, oh my God. Like with Tua, I'd seen him in games and I thought he was okay. And I thought, though, when I turned on the film, I was going to be disappointed, but Tua blew my doors off. I thought it was so good when I watched the film. I couldn't believe it. So I'm excited to look at Lawrence. I mean, this is an athletic kid, big. He's got a whip release. The ball comes out fast with zip. He can make all the throws. He looks like he's sort of got that natural charisma that his teammates respond to. Now, I've not spoken to anybody at Clemson to sort of get a feel for if that is the case. But as a player, he looks like it. Just from watching games during the season, he looks like he has a lot of the tools to be a frontline guy. I can't wait to dive in and really chart him out. I actually sent out my quarterback. You know, I have that in-depth charting quarterback system. I sent it out to a buddy of mine who runs sort of an independent analytics company, and they're sort of going to rip my system apart and sort of tell me, hey, we have to make it more efficient here, more efficient there, fix this, fix that. So I can't wait to take that newly tweaked system, which will probably be done in like July or August, and then use it on next year's guys. Because, I mean, Lawrence is the guy that everybody's been like sort of hyping for 2 years. But all of a sudden this year, people started talking Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not studied him or Lawrence on film. But I will say when I watch Clemson, Lawrence jumps out. When I watch Ohio State, I look at him and say, okay, he's not a traditional quarterback. This guy's more to me in that Lamar Jackson athlete mold. Where does he fit as a quarterback? Is he a good enough thrower to be a starting quarterback? Or is he a guy that you're going to have to manipulate your offense, sort of like Baltimore did, and they built an offense that allowed Lamar Jackson to be a superstar? And that's what I'm trying to figure out with Fields is I don't know. Is he a traditional guy, or is he a guy that you have to really manipulate? And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, is he a guy that's going to take creative coaching to build an offense that suits his skill set instead of plugging him into 28 of the 32 NFL offenses, which are somewhat similar?
Yeah, we've seen, various levels of success with these Ohio State quarterbacks. The other interesting guy you threw out there is Beau Nicks, who I'm a fan of, actually. And, you have some people who really like this kid from North Carolina, Sam Howell. So I threw on the North Carolina Clemson game, where they almost upset him. And, I think I saw it during the season. I said, let me refresh my memory. And, I'm thinking to see like a couple wow plays out of Howell. I'll tell you, to your point, like you said, I just didn't see it. Like, and the kid is just a gamer, right? He's just gonna keep you in the game, and he'll make enough plays when it counts. But man, some of the throws, I mean, a lot of dinks and dunks, and then missing wide open targets. And I'm saying, I get it, he's a freshman, but I don't know. I like Beau Nicks a little bit more. And then the other guy, this North Dakota State kid, Tre Lance. All of a sudden, Mel Kiper mentions him on Sports Center, and the whole Twitterverse blows up. And now he's got all this first-round buzz around him.
Yeah, but exactly like you mentioned, a lot of the time we see bits and pieces about a player in the media, and we may see a game or two where a guy's really productive. Until you actually sit down and watch the film, it's really hard to know how good a player is. And I think a perfect example, last year we talked about, when we started the fall season, we talked a lot about the Tyler Johnson kid from Minnesota. He was getting all the hype as a first-round guy and everything. And both you and I, once we started watching the film, we kept just saying one thing: can he run? It doesn't look like he can run. And the more things went, I think every NFL team agreed. Great routes, smart kid, competitive, phenomenal hands, great ball skills, everything. Can't run. And that's why he didn't go in the first 3 rounds, despite being unbelievably productive in Minnesota. So your point there about the quarterback in North Carolina, a lot of time the stuff you see when you're watching clips or watching games as sort of a casual observer is different than what you get when you actually start scouting and really writing notes on every throw, not giving them a pass when they miss wide open guys, because in a live game, you're going to miss some throws. When you grade a guy, every throw matters. And it's really, that to me is the beauty of this business.
No doubt about it. Russ Landy, Rick Saratella, Infectious Scouting Podcast. We've gone virtual this year onto the Zoom platform. It's been a pleasure here to bring you guys into our living rooms and our homes. And that was one of the good things about the draft. I enjoyed that part of it. Who are some other guys, Russ, on your radar that we could be inside their living rooms come draft day next year?
Well, firstly, it's really interesting. I mean, everybody this year, they were talking about Okudah from Ohio State and how he was the best one. And as the season went on, I think a lot of people started to realize that Stingley kid at LSU legitimately is in the discussion, or was last year, with Okudah to be the best corner in the country. And now a year later, I think this is a kid that has to be in the discussion, depending on the team that's drafting. But he's got to be in the discussion to be the first pick. I mean, especially with today's, I think the more passing, elite corners are so important. And this kid, to me, when I watch him, there's not much he can't do. There's a little bit Darrelle Revis in this kid when you watch him play. He's got the confidence, the swagger. And I don't mean it in a bad swagger. I mean it in a great swagger. Corners have to be confident because that's the hardest position in terms of the mental toughness to play in the NFL other than quarterback. And he's got it. He seems like he can forget the pass play. When he screws up or he slips or whatever, instantly he's back at full speed at full confidence the next snap. I think this kid's got a lot of tools to really challenge to be that first pick, unless there's a team that has the first pick and needs a quarterback. I mean, he's a special guy, and also the lineman.
Well, let me stop you right there. Yeah, because you threw almost a curveball on. I thought when you said Okudah, I thought you were going to go Ohio State, but you're exactly right. Stingley, the LSU kid, probably the best cornerback prospect in college football. But this guy, Shaun Wade, at Ohio State, we talked about this, I think, on a previous show when I spoke to Chase Young in Atlantic City at the Maxwell Club. He said, "Listen, Shaun Wade, I know you think Okudah's good, but Shaun Wade is like even better." And that's a guy now. I mean, he could be a top 5 pick. So their cornerbacks are strong.
Riser too. A guy that people aren't talking about now, that you could see him maybe in October, November start getting
the media catches on.
The media starts realizing how good this kid is. And hey, the reality is, let's be honest, they had Okudah, they had Arnett, 2 guys that went in the first round. Whether we agree with Arnett going there, he was still a really good college corner. So the fact that this kid's your third corner, of course, people aren't paying that much attention in the media to it. But I think as the season gets going and this kid's a starting cornerback and the premier cornerback at that school, people are going to start talking about him a lot more. This draft coming up. People talked about the draft that just passed as being a really good one. This one coming up could be just as good. I mean, it's going to be a really deep class, probably not as deep at quarterback, but other than that, I think it could be a really good class. Almost every position has a lot of talent.
So I know where you're going next because you got him halfway out of your mouth. Penei Sewell, the Oregon offensive lineman. And, we talked about Trevor Lawrence being and I don't personally throw this term around loosely, but others do. Generational type of talent. This guy, Sewell, you want a hot take, Russ? This is the meanest, nastiest mug I've ever scouted in person.
Oh,
I'm down on the field in Oregon. I forget who they're playing, and I'm down there, and this guy is beating up his own teammates, and he's a sophomore. Okay, mind you, the offensive line class that just came out. They had 5 or 6 guys. 4 guys got drafted, another 2 signed. I mean, they had 6 guys that are in the league. This guy's bullying those guys around. He's beating these guys up, and they're like scared of him. But the intensity this guy brings, and then on the field, I mean, you disrespect this quarterback, he's putting you on the ground. I mean, this is the kind of guy that every team drools over of having as your left tackle piece. And this guy's got the goods.
There's no doubt he has the goods. And what's funny is you mentioned that they got 4 guys drafted and 2 other ones signed as a free agent. I think the ironic part of that is I think he actually hurt their draft stock. I know when I was watching film and I'm watching them and I'm looking at, what was it, Throckmorton? And I'm thinking, oh, he's a marginal guy. Maybe he has a chance. And then I see Perry do something. I'm like, wait a second here. That's an NFL lineman. This guy, not so much. And I think he really was so much better than every lineman they had that I think it made you almost say, wait a second, am I giving these other guys a little bit too high of a grade? Because this is what a great NFL lineman looks like. These guys look like guys that are going to fight to survive in the NFL. He's
Yeah.
he's a special guy because he's not only competitive, he's an athlete. He can run, he can block the corner. I mean, there's a lot of things to really like about this kid. I can't wait to dive into his film halfway through this year, see the progress he's made, although it's a strange offseason with no spring football.
Yeah.
See what he's done in terms of working. I'll bet you he's going to get better taking a break because truthfully, some of these guys getting that break, no spring football, keeps their legs fresh. If they're working out on their own and staying in great shape, I think this could be really beneficial for a lot of the guys that have already established themselves as high-end players.
It's interesting because at what point, like, how many weeks does the college football season need to be canceled when the top guys like a Lawrence or Sewell, they just say, hey, you know what? Why am I going to play 5 games? I'm just going to prepare for the draft.
Yeah, I think the elite guys, that's the risk that the college football and NFL runs is if it either is a truncated season or a postponed season into January, those elite guys, the top 50 guys will just say, I'm out.
Why bother? Why risk it?
Yep. And if they cancel the season, then they're going to offer, the NCAA is going to say, well, everybody gets another year of eligibility. Well, the question becomes is how confident are you in your abilities? Because Trevor Lawrence will come out because he'll be 3 years removed from high school. Stingley's going to come out. But the debate here is, what if you're a good player, but you haven't played in a year? Are you going to have the courage to say I'm coming out? Or are you going to say, I'll go back and play that year? What if there aren't enough players?
Well,
I mean, just a random note there.
The NFL advisory board is going to have their hands full with all the players submitting their paperwork. I mean, God, that is going to be not a job.
Think about it this way. What if the college season doesn't happen? Does the NFL advisory board have to expand to where they provide, say, 3 reports on every player so the kid can get a fair estimate of where he
I think they have to.
Before he doesn't come out too early? Because what if 500 kids declare?
Right.
Because I would bet the NFL would say we are only going to draft people who declare, because everybody will have one more year of eligibility.
And to that point, like, how much watered down do the grades then become? Because as you know, they're not going to hire more staff. It's just going to be the same staff, just responsible for more people. It's just going to be a time thing where it's just like, all right, well, I might watch 1 game instead of 3 games, and you don't get that consistency of a grade.
Yeah, it's so weird how this has changed. I mean, changed everything forever.
Well,
let's weird.
Let's wrap up our conversation for 2021, because I know the people at home always want to hear about the skill position players. I know you got a couple goodies for us. So who's rising up your board here in the preseason?
Well, I love the Devonta Smith, the receiver from Alabama. When I watched film of them last year, and I'm not going to go out here and be crazy and say he's far better than the other guys who went in the first round this past year, but I think he is on the same plane with both those guys. I think he's a legitimate top 15 guy who's going to challenge to be the number 1 receiver in the class. I really like him. I think he's a much quicker, much faster guy. I think he has better hands than most other receivers. I really like this kid. And I think the next 2 guys sort of be tied for 5th. You have the Jamar Chase, LSU, the receiver, and Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson. These are 2 guys. I like both of them. I think Etienne's a very valuable guy because I love him catching the ball in the backfield, making plays in space. But again, it comes down to, if you're not an elite special back, do teams take you in the first round? And that's where I think Etienne could be in a spot where, is he going to be a first, or is somebody going to say, I can get a guy like him, like a J.K. Dobbins, in that second round? But I like both of those guys. I think Chase sort of got overlooked this year because Justin Jefferson pretty much caught like 95% of the balls that LSU threw last year. But Chase is a good player. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. I think he's going to really show this year what Justin Jefferson did last year, that he's an elite guy and deserves consideration in that first round.
I thought it was surprising to hear at the podium during the combine when the media polled the cornerbacks. They always ask, who's the toughest guy you faced? Who's the toughest guy you faced during your career? Jamar Chase. I mean, his name must have came up at least half a dozen times. I mean, maybe a dozen times, so the players are well aware. You mentioned Travis Etienne, and this will be the last topic we cover and wrap things up, but I'm hearing now, I'm curious to get your thoughts, because word on the streets is Etienne is going to declare for the supplemental draft.
Wow, I had not heard that. That's very interesting.
That's the word on the street. from a pretty reliable source. Now, that remains to be seen. I'm curious to know. They said that the NFL, from what I'm hearing, the NFL is going to have these restrictions in place to kind of tame the supplemental draft. Well, what kind of restrictions can you put in place? If somebody wants to declare for the supplemental draft, they're gonna declare. I mean, what are you going to put a restriction, a new rule now on it?
No. But see, that's the one thing that's not out there. What's always been there is you can only apply for the supplemental draft. There are reasons. You can't just decide late you want to come to the NFL. If you're an underclassman who is in good academic standing and you don't declare by January 15th, that you're not just allowed to say, I changed my mind. I want to come out in June. The NFL won't allow that. They view it as if your academic standing has changed and you're not eligible to play this year. If you got in trouble off the field and were told basically get off our campus and no other college will let you play, or, and this occasionally has happened, if your family has had a crisis where you deem it necessary to leave college and go
Provide.
try to earn a living to provide, that's allowed. But generally, it's academic standing, drug tests, character that make you leave school where you cannot play this fall. They don't just want guys who to sort of try to jerry-rig it and not have to compete with other players. Because imagine if he came out with the supplemental, that means basically he didn't have to run and get compared to the J.K. Dobbins or any of those guys, because now it's a whole nother ball game. It's just him. He's definitely the number one running back in the supplemental draft. So the NFL really frowns on it, and they've been pretty stringent in the past about telling kids you cannot, and they let it get known. I wouldn't be surprised if what you're saying that he's legitimately considering or has already decided he's doing it, and the NFL's heard it. I wouldn't be shocked if the NFL feels he does not meet the credentials, if they have not reached out to him and said, hey, we are going to tell you no unless you can come up with a reason to justify not having come out for the January 15th deadline.
That's interesting. So, maybe there's a loophole. I mean, maybe
Corona gives a loop. Yep. Or
Right.
maybe Corona gives him a loophole. Maybe he says, hey, I'm too scared to go back on campus. I mean, is the NFL going to allow something like that?
Interesting stuff. I guess I lied. I got one more question since we're talking about Travis Etienne. Where would you have ranked him in this year's draft? I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the first runner off the board. You mentioned J.K. Dobbins. And then the two-part question.
Yep.
If he does become eligible for the supplemental, do you see a team using a first-round pick on Etienne?
No, he won't go in the first round of the supplemental, because that means you're giving up next year's first rounder. No, he won't be a first rounder in the supplemental. He'd probably be a second. Players generally go a little lower in the supplemental than they would in the traditional draft. I think I probably would have had him above Dobbins. I think he's a little bit better in space, a little bit more elusive, not obviously as strong or powerful a runner. But I wouldn't have had him as high as Helaire or as the kid from Wisconsin. Those guys, to me, were sort of the cream of the crop. I mean, I think Taylor's probably the best all-around back. And I think Helaire is the best receiving back in this past draft. This kid, to me, is a notch below Helaire as a receiver. And I don't think he has that just explosive power that Taylor brings to the table.
Fair enough. I agree with all those sentiments, and that'll be another interesting situation. I guess we'll have answers to it within the next month or so if Travis Etienne declares for the supplemental. It'll be exciting. I mean, we haven't had a player that good declare for the supplemental. It's been quite some time. Since we've had a good player declare. And I'm thinking back. I'm so disappointed still that these rookies can't get a tryouts. We're not going to discover this year's Wayne Corbett or Adam Thielen or Miles Austin. I mean, John Randall, all these guys that had rookie tryouts and made a huge career out of it. But, with that being said, Russ, we are going to have our Marvin Jones free agent seminar on Sunday. Marvin is former first-round pick, Florida State Hall of Famer, current coach with the Omaha Beef there in the Champions Indoor Football. So he's actually taken a big interest in helping these guys out, and he's going to oversee our free agent database, try to link some of these guys up. Some of these guys we saw at the BSN Combine, like a Kyle Buss from UConn, who tested through the roof out there. I mean, his laser times
he had a great workout. Yep. I mean, he was incredible. Yeah, he was definitely.
He tested well enough. where he might have got a tryout with an NFL team. And so, what do we do with these guys? Well, Marvin's going to address that on Sunday. We have Baldy kicking off our scouting seminar on Memorial Day Monday. He's all pumped up. We did a dry run the other day, and he's breaking down Jonathan Ogden versus Dwight Freeney. And, he's just going on and on and on. Hey, Baldy, hey, this is just a test run, baby. Hey, save it for Monday. But he's pumped up about that. And, we've got the 2021 Draft Bible this year that we're actually going to offer year round. So instead of waiting till March to get the book, we're going to offer it so that you can access it online and view the Draft Bible as it's being built. So we're going to have that kind of access. You'll be able to unlock the Draft Bible probably at some point this summer, hopefully June. By July latest, you'll be able to, get all that magic and access our rankings. So we're excited about that. And shout out to Ryan Roberts and Dakota Follett behind the scenes, just cranking. And boy, man, we've got hundreds of scouting reports already, and we're just polishing them up, spit shining them, they're going to present them to the masses. But we're excited about everything we've got going on. Of course, the Infectious Scouting podcast with Russ Landy. What's better than that? My favorite time of the week. We'll try to get on a more regular routine, but hey, it is the salt life over here in Jersey. So hey, if we get lucky, Russ, maybe we could even deliver a on-location Jersey Shore Infectious Scouting show at some point.
Well, there's no doubt I'm going to be coming down there at some point this summer. Even
you got to keep your shirt on for the show, though. You got to keep your shirt on for the.
I'd be doing it even if it wasn't.
Well, hey, I got the guinea teas.
That's what I'm saying.
You bring the beverage. And this has been our first edition of the 2021 Infectious Scouting podcast, virtual style. We're going Zoom with it this year. So I don't know if it's technically a podcast anymore. Is it a Zoom cast? I don't know, Russ. We got to tweak that and come back next week. And, I guess we'll start breaking down some conferences and do a little kind of conference preview. That's the other thing. Virtual media days.
Yeah, exactly right.
So just the whole new landscape of what football is. If you're tuning in now and just catching the tail end of the show, Russ and myself just went in depth on the state of football, what we anticipate, how the tea leaves might fall, and a lot of good stuff. I mean, hey, again, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. We're just taking our best educated guesses based on the people that we talk to and we know and everything else that's going on. So for Russ Landy in Chicago, Rick Saratella here in New Jersey, our man Dakota behind the scenes, our dynamite director. Till the next time, everybody, keep it locked.